Hola YouTube, bien or no, what is going on? So today I wanted to go over my final thoughts on Lima, Peru. I've been here 3 weeks now, leaving here pretty soon, heading back to Medellin. But I wanted to kind of do a deep dive and give my overall thoughts on Lima, Peru, talk about safety, dating, transportation, cost of living. I'm gonna try to cover everything in this video for you guys to help you make a better decision if you are potentially considering coming to Lima, Peru as a passport bro. Now, I do want to start off by saying that I highly recommend coming to Lima, Peru. One, if you are trying to learn Spanish, I've said this in other videos, but the Spanish accent here is very neutral. So it's a lot easier to understand. I know I definitely struggled a bit and still struggle. If we're going to keep it 100, I still struggle with understanding Colombian Spanish. So their accent is very neutral. They articulate very well. So this is definitely a very good place to come if you are trying to learn Spanish for the first time. Also, the other thing I would say is that you don't have the same safety concerns that you have in Medellin, Colombia, but I will touch on that later. So I do want to start off by going into, in general, just transportation. So you have three forms of transportation here. Primarily, that would be Uber, Metro, and you have taxis. Now, in the month that I've been here, I've mainly only took Ubers and only taxis when they have come through the Uber app. Sometimes Uber or taxis will accept rides on Uber, so you end up getting a taxi instead of a regular car. But overall, I've gotten around pretty fine with Uber. What are the costs of Uber, or at least what have I spent on Uber? I would say coming from the airport to where I'm staying currently is in Barranco. I spent about $15 for that trip from the airport to my Airbnb. But as far as getting around Lima, I've spent anywhere between $3 to $15. So I want to explain a little bit more. If you are just going in general to in Barranco and Miraflores, which are going to be your primary two cities that you'll be in for the most part, you'll spend anywhere between like $3 to $5 or $6. But if you want to go a little bit further out, like a little bit more towards the center area, kind of like their downtown, the historic center area, that you're going to end up spending like close to, I would say, $10 or so to get there, and the same getting back. So it can be a little pricey if you're going a little bit further out. But for the most part, it should average anywhere between like $3 and $6. Next, going into where to stay. As I kind of touched on a bit, there's two main areas you can stay in. There is Barranco and there's Miraflores. Now, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, it feels like in Miraflores, it's more mainly just restaurants, versus in Barranco, there's a little bit more to do. And like I said, this is purely just my opinion, but you have a lot more clubs. At least where I'm staying, I have two of, I think, more of the popular clubs that are close to me. And then also within walking distance, about a 15-minute walk or so, there's the general Barranco area where there's like the art section and some clubs and restaurants and bars and stuff like that. So those are going to be your two main areas that you're going to want to stay in when you come here. Like I said, I'm staying in Barranco. And here I've been able to get around. There's a popular mall here called La Comar. That's about a 10 to 15 minute walk from me. And then the nearest Smart Fit or the gym, because, you know, I try to work out every day, that's about a 20-minute walk from me as well. So, like I said, Barranco is pretty well located. Going into the next thing, as far as money and payments, they use something here called soles. And I would say that I do feel that Lima, Peru is definitely a little bit more expensive than Medellin, Colombia, or Colombia in general. Now, especially I'm talking about when you go to restaurants. If you're going to some of the nicer restaurants here, you can expect to spend anywhere between $15 to $30 per plate, or let's just say to eat. I usually get some type of appetizers, a main course, and a drink, and that's been averaging me at some of the nicer restaurants around $30. If you're just doing like fast food, that can be anywhere between $7 to $14, $15. So it can be a little bit pricey to eat here. What I'm paying for my Airbnb, I am paying $980 for the month that I'm here, from basically July 1st to July 31st. And as far as food, I've been able to spend about $100 a week on groceries. And like I said, this isn't including eating out or anything else. This is just purely groceries and me cooking at home. It is a very card friendly place. The entire month I've been here, I have not needed to use cash anywhere. And this also includes when I went to Cusco as well, to go to Machu Picchu and Lake Humanity. Also, Hakachina as well. I've been able to pay with card. I only needed cash one time, and that was for a tour that I did. But other than that, I've been able to pay with cards. So it's very card friendly. You can get around without having to actually get out cash. But in the event that you do need to get out cash, I'm going to put up here an ATM that you definitely should go to. This ATM doesn't have any fees. So this is the one that when I researched, was the one to go to. I do want to give a bit of a heads up here. You do want to be careful. I did lose my ATM card the second time I tried to go and get cash, just because I wanted to have cash before I went to Cusco in case I needed it. And essentially I made an error. I hit savings instead of checking, and it didn't give me an option to go back. It only gave me the option to select the amount of money that I want to take out. So I hit 100 soles or whatever, so hoping it would just cancel the transaction. And what it did is actually took my card, and this was right before I was going to Cusco the next morning. So to make a long story short, I ended up having to order a new card and getting it sent to Colombia. So just make sure you take your time. Don't rush through it and hit the wrong thing, or else it will take your debit card. Other than that, I want to get into cultural and social observations. Now, one of the first things that you do notice here is that I'm here in July, or filming this in July of 2025, and this is their winter, so it's very cold and gray. Actually, today is actually a nice day is weather-wise, but normally I would say in the event or in the time frame that I've been here, within a month, I've maybe seen sun in Lima about 5 times in a month. So it doesn't rain. This is considered it's very dry here, their dry season, so you're not going to get a lot of rain, or I think I haven't really got any rain since I've been here. It's just cold and gray, and like I said, you're not going to get a lot of sun. So definitely keep that in mind if you do decide to come here in the winter. As far as nightclubs, they do have a very good nightlife. I would say their nightlife is very similar to what you would find in either the United States or in Europe. And what I mean by that is that when you go out, people still kind of mingle. You can find random people talking to random people and dancing with random people, versus in Colombia, in Medellin, at least from my experience, most people tend to go out in mixed groups. They tend to be at a table, and they're not really mingling with other people that they don't know. Like, there isn't just a dance floor. Everyone's on the dance floor and kind of dancing and, meeting random people. So not saying it doesn't happen, but it just isn't as common in Medellin. Definitely if you're not in the touristy places. Maybe if you're in Provenza at some of the clubs there, but for the most part, if you're not in Provenza, I don't really see it. So the nightlife here is definitely like that. I would say the nightclubs do stay open very late, up until 6 a.m. And trust me, the people here do stay out very late as well when they are going to the clubs. The next thing I noticed is that the women here definitely do dress a lot better. I don't know if it's just because it's winter and it's cold, but you do see more women going out in, dress heels or dress in boots. Like, they actually dress up. Versus in Medellin, on a typical night out, most women are going to be wearing tennis shoes, jeans, and maybe a lingerie top. You're not going to get, a lot of dress and heels there in Medellin or in Colombia for most places that I've gone. So women there tend to dress for comfort versus dressing for style and beauty. At the club, I've only went to 2 clubs. One of the clubs I paid about $15 for entry, and the other I got on a guest list. So you do want to make sure you get on some type of list before going to clubs. And what I've also felt here is that the locals here, I can't say, at least in my experience, I don't really feel like they were trying to hit me with the gringo tax. Like in Colombia, you constantly feel like, some places you're trying to get hustled. Like, if you go to a place where there isn't any prices listed, like a restaurant where they have a menu, then you feel like you don't know if they're just charging you more, or not feel like they usually are. I had this happen to me before where I went to a restaurant that I would frequent. Let's just say for a meal, they were charging me 30 mil pesos. And then, I would always talk to the same woman or person when I come. And then another time when they weren't there, I got charged 15 mil pesos. So, you definitely are getting hustled sometimes depending on where you go. I don't feel like that's here. The people are, I would say, a little cold. They're not as friendly as they are in Medellin, but different culture, so that's to be expected. Lima, Peru definitely reminds me a lot of Bogota, Colombia. So if you've been there, this would be, I would say, equivalent. What else did I have here? Want to refer to my notes just to make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, that's pretty much it for like cultural observations and kind of like social observations. The next thing I'm going to talk about now is dating, which I know a lot of you may be interested in. So from my understanding, and I'm going to just put this out there, I do feel like it is a little bit easier to date in Medellin, Colombia, or in Colombia as a whole than it is to date here in Lima, Peru. And the only reason why is because of the financial dependency that women have in Colombia on men versus here in Lima, Peru. Now, because it is the capital, I would say the economy is very good here. So, a lot of women, they make money. They're not constantly asking for money. In the time that I've been here, I've maybe gone on 5 or 6 dates, and I've never had one woman ask me for money, to ask me to pay for an Uber, anything. Versus the opposite in Colombia, generally women are asking you for money or something very quickly. Here, I haven't experienced that in the month that I've been here and the dates that I've gone out on. I do feel like the women here are a little bit more intelligent. And like I said, I think also because it's the capital, but primarily, and this is, could be a deal breaker for a lot of guys, is that the women here are not as pretty. There are beautiful women here in Peru. I don't want to misconstrue that and, you just say, oh, all women in Lima or in Peru are not pretty. No, there's a lot of pretty women here, more than I think what they get credit for on the internet. It's not as much as it is in Medellin or in Colombia. I think Colombia definitely has the upper hand on that. And like I said, you still can find beautiful women here in Lima, Peru. Now, they are Latina, so they are going to be late. Some of the girls that I met up with, were anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes late. Like I said, it's Latin America, so that doesn't change. I also feel like it's a little bit of a better dating market because of, or if you don't speak fluent Spanish, there's a lot more women here that speak English. And a big part of why I think that is because here in Lima, they've had tourism or more tourism longer than Colombia has had. And this is probably excluding Cartagena, but other parts of Colombia. So they just have been used to foreigners, having to deal with foreigners more. So it's just more of a necessity to learn English. Also, more women are, going to universities and stuff like that here. So it makes a big difference. The other thing that I have noticed as well is that it can go into safety as well, is that you don't have that whole scopolamine worry when you come here and you're dating here in Lima. So, and I have to say it definitely is refreshing. I don't really have that worry because I don't meet girls, from the street as far as like the working girls. I don't deal with any of those. I'm not meeting girls really on Tinder or anything like that. My preferred method is try to meet them in person or try to go through Instagram. But I definitely stay off of Tinder. But even if you do want to use those medians, those applications, you can still meet girls here and then not have that worry of, is she going to drug my drink or put some scopolamine in my food and, try to rob me. Women here don't have as much financial dependency on men as they do in Colombia, so that isn't an issue here. Pay for play. It is something that still exists here. It's still Latin America. It just isn't as much in your face as it is in Colombia. And it's just not as frequent. Using Tinder here, I maybe have come across 3 girls that, propose something as far as pay for play, but other than that, it's just been all completely normal girls. I think the other thing too is that there just isn't, like, in Colombia or in Medellin, there typically is a place you can go to find the pay for play. Like you can go to Parque Jettis or Fosse Dos or wherever else, people go for those type of things. Here, I haven't heard of anything like that. You don't get guys constantly like, oh, hey, do you want to go where the girls are or anything like that? It's just very much a normal culture. I do feel like you can find something very long-term here. Like you can actually find a wife here. I'm not saying you can't find a wife or a girlfriend in Medellin, Colombia, but it's a lot harder. It's going to take a lot more screening. It's going to take you to go through a lot more bullshit and headaches than you would here. Now, it is still Latin America. They are still women. So a lot of women here still do stupid shit. So I don't want to act like they're excluded from that. Lastly, I would say 2 of the more important things or 3 of the more important things that may be a huge deciding factor for you if you want to come here and date in Lima, Peru, is that I do feel like a lot more women here have a 2-parent household, meaning they have a father and a mother, or their fathers are present in their lives more than what you would find in Colombia. In Colombia, generally, because there's a lot of infidelity, there's a lot of cheating, men tend to not be a part of the family, or there isn't that 2-parent household as much as you say would like in Medellin, Colombia, versus what you have here in Lima, Peru. The other thing is that the majority of women here aren't covered in a lot of tattoos. You see that a lot in Medellin. It seems like tattoos are just part of the culture in Medellin, which is something that really sucks because you'll get girls that got tattoos on their neck and chest and arms and legs and just multiple random tattoos, randomly placed. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a couple of, little tattoos, but when it's just covered or they have more than a guy does, it just sucks. So that's another thing. That's a huge difference here when it comes to dating. The last thing, and this may be important for a lot of you guys. I know it is for me. There are a lot less single mothers here in Lima, Peru, or I'm going to say maybe Peru, than there is in Medellin, Colombia, or in Colombia as a whole. From my understanding, the statistics are in Medellin or in Colombia, about 70 to 80% of women are single mothers in Medellin, in Colombia. Versus in Peru, I don't think the statistic is that high. Majority of the women that I've met and that I've talked to don't have kids. So they're definitely a little bit more cautious, and I would say maybe more sexually, more educated when it comes to sex education and contraception and all that stuff than they are in Colombia. Is definitely a little bit harder to find the 9s and 10s, but they do exist. And then lastly, I want to say, what was my experience like being a brother here? I would say I'm more biracial or mixed. So I can be kind of seen as biracial or confused for Latin or Puerto Rican or whatever. So I didn't experience any kind of racism here. I didn't feel as if anybody, was prejudiced against me because I am, black or whatever. So I definitely didn't feel anything like that. So my final thoughts are, it's definitely a good place to come and potentially settle down if you are looking for something serious. It's very good for safety. Food is amazing here. You do have to be a little bit careful with that because you may end up spending a lot of money on going out to eat. But overall, prices here in Lima, Peru, like I said, I do feel like it's a little bit more expensive than you would find in Medellin, Colombia. But overall, I feel like you can definitely live here. It's safe. Dating is going to be a lot better, more fruitful. You're going to get more substance out of the women here versus in Medellin or in Colombia. A lot of times it tends to be very surface level just because a lot of the women, I think, in Colombia understand, that looks are very important, is what men value. So they tend to kind of go all in on the looks and tend to lack some on the personality or, bringing more to the table than just looks and sex. Now, like I said, this isn't a blanket statement where it's all Colombian women in Colombia. It's just a large majority of it. That's all they really have to depend on. And unfortunately, because a lot of you guys accept that, I just have a pretty girl, that's all they really do need to bring to the table. You're not really requiring anything of them as far as them doing anything for you or respect or anything like that. So at least from what I've seen. So, that's it. That's my final thoughts on Lima, Peru. To answer the question, if any of you guys are thinking it, would I move here or would I live here? Me personally, I love the city of Medellin, or in general, I just love Colombia. My plan is to stay in Colombia. I don't plan on going anywhere else. I do plan on making Colombia my home base and then going to other countries, either here in Latin America or Europe or whatever. But ultimately, I do not plan to leave Colombia. I love Colombian culture. The food isn't the best, but it's still good. And overall, I feel like the cultural things are things that I actually really love and connect with versus it just being purely about women. If you are going to Colombia strictly for dating, you are going to get burned out of dealing with women constantly asking you for money to do things or whatever. And this is if you're in the major cities, like, I'm going to go with Cartagena, Medellin, maybe a Bogota. But if you're in the smaller parts, you can definitely find more normal women who are a little bit more interesting than just, if you're dealing with women in the bigger cities or solely in Medellin. So that's it for this video. Hopefully it's been helpful. Like always, guys, like and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And until the next one, Peace.